The builders going under in this country right now are not the dodgy ones. That is the thing almost nobody has right. When a building company collapses, the assumption is that somebody was cutting corners, taking deposits, running a shonky operation. Sometimes that is true. Mostly it is the opposite. The ones in the liquidator's file are the blokes with 20 years in the trade, a good name in the district, and work booked out 18 months ahead, full order book, signed contracts sitting in the drawer. The order book is what killed them. And it is happening at a rate that should have been front page news for 4 years running. According to an analysis on the end of ASIC's insolvency release, published on July 13th, an estimated 3,435 construction companies entered external administration in the 2025 to 2026 financial year. That is roughly 9 a day, every day, weekends included. If you have a son in the trade or money sitting with a builder, or you are watching a house go up down the road, the mechanism behind this is still running. It has slowed. It has not stopped. By the end of this, you will know exactly how a profitable builder with plenty of work ends up insolvent, why the better his book, the faster he fell, and who actually eats the loss. It is not the bank and it is not the owner. Start with the shape of it, because the numbers by themselves are just numbers until you see the slope. According to ASIC's financial year data, construction insolvencies rose from around 2,213 in the financial year from 2022 to 2023 to roughly between 2,977 and 3,882 in the financial year from 2023 to 2024, depending on how repeat administrations are counted. That is a jump of about 42% in a single year. The year after that, 3,217, another 26%. Then 3,596. 4 years, doubling. In New South Wales alone, construction insolvencies numbered in the hundreds to over 1,000 in recent years, according to ASIC state breakdowns, though the exact figure needs direct verification. Now, why does that matter to you if you are retired and your building days are behind you? Because a builder is not one job. A builder is a payroll and a payment chain. Carpenters, brickies, sparkies, plumbers, plasterers, roofers, the bloke who does the driveways. Most of them are not employees. They are subcontractors invoicing after the work is done, waiting on progress payments. When the company at the top of that chain stops, the money stops with it, and everybody underneath has already spent the labour. You cannot unpour a slab. So how does a company with signed contracts and a full book end up with nothing? The answer is a piece of paper that every Australian who has ever built a house has signed without thinking twice about it. The fixed price contract. Here is how it worked, and for about 30 years it worked fine. You want a house built. The builder quotes a price. That price is locked. If timber goes up between signing and framing, that is the builder's problem, not yours. That certainty is exactly why you wanted a fixed price in the first place. And any builder who would not offer one looked shifty. The whole residential industry ran on it. Banks lent against it. Buyers relied on it. And it holds up perfectly, as long as the cost of building a house next year is roughly the cost of building one this year. Before the next part, one thing worth saying. Plainly, there are people watching this who lost a business exactly the way it is about to be described, and who have spent 3 years being told by people who were not there that they must have run it badly. If this channel is worth anything, it is worth getting that record straight. Subscribe and the next one comes to you. So, between 2020 and 2022, the industry did something that in hindsight looks like a trap, but at the time looked like the best year anybody had seen. Order books filled, grants and low rates pushed a wave of people into building at once. Builders signed contracts at pace, at prices set in that moment. for houses that would be finished in 18 months, 2 years sometimes longer. Then the input costs moved. Supply chains stalled. Materials that had been stable for a decade were suddenly not. Timber, steel, concrete, the lot. Labour got scarce because everyone was building at the same time, so the price of getting a chippy on site went up as well. And every one of those signed contracts was locked at the old price. Sit with what that means for a moment, because this is the whole thing. A builder with 100 houses under contract is not sitting on 100 opportunities. He is sitting on 100 obligations. Each one priced before the costs moved, each one now costing more to deliver than he is allowed to charge. The bigger the order book, the deeper the hole. The more successful he had been at winning work, the faster he went down. That is why the good ones went first. They had the most work, and he cannot fix it. He cannot go back to the customer and ask for more because the contract is fixed, and that is the entire point of it. He cannot walk away from the job because that is a breach and the bank guarantee and the insurance sit behind it. He cannot stop because stopping means the progress payment never lands and he needs that payment to pay the subbies for the last stage. So he keeps building, at a loss, on every single job, hoping the next stage clears enough to cover the last one. That is not bad management. That is a man holding up a roof he is contractually forbidden from putting down. On the 31st of March, 2023, this stopped being a theory. Porter Davis Home Group went into liquidation. It was not a fly-by-night operation. It was one of the larger residential builders in the country. 1,700 homes were affected. 1,500 of them were unfinished in Victoria, another 200 in Queensland. Around 470 people who worked there directly were put off. The company owed money to something in the order of 2,000 creditors, and some reports at the time claimed subcontractors had not been paid since before Christmas, though this detail could not be confirmed via an approved source. Since before Christmas, meaning they kept turning up on the promise of the next payment through the holidays, and then the door shut. On the same day, Lloyd Group went into administration. ProBuild had already gone. Condev, Oracle Building Corporation, a run of them inside about 12 months. And the families in those 1,500 half-built houses were not covered the way they assumed they were. They had paid deposits. They had drawn down loans. They were paying rent somewhere else while they waited. Some of them found out that the insurance they thought was automatic had never been taken out. And there is a detail in that collapse that every parent watching this needs to hear, because it is the one that catches people who did everything properly. When you sign to build a house in this country, there is meant to be an insurance policy sitting behind it. Different states call it different things, but the purpose is the same. If the builder dies, disappears or goes under, that policy is what finishes your house or gives you your money back. It is not optional. It is a legal requirement, and the builder is the one who has to take it out. The builder, not you. So the buyer hands over a deposit, sees the contract signed, and reasonably assumes the cover exists, because the law says it must. Most people never ask to see the certificate. There is no obvious reason to. You would not ask a surgeon for his registration on the way into theatre. When Porter Davis went down, some of those families discovered that on their particular contract, the policy had never been taken out. Read that again. The requirement existed. The paperwork behind it did not, which meant the deposit was gone. The house was a slab and a frame in the weather. The loan was still being repaid, and the thing that was supposed to catch them was a rule that somebody had simply not followed. There was no fraud alleged in most of those cases. It was administrative. Cover that should have been arranged at signing on a job among hundreds was not arranged, and nobody downstream had any way of knowing. It took a government intervention to sort out part of that mess, which tells you the gap was real. So if you know somebody building right now, there is one question worth asking them tonight. Ask whether they have seen the actual insurance certificate for their build, with their address on it, not the contract, the certificate. Most people have never looked. It takes 5 minutes and it is the difference between an unfinished house and a paid one. Now, who actually carries the loss when this happens? Not the bank. The bank has security, not, in most cases, the directors personally, unless the paperwork is unusual. It lands on the subbies, the bricklayer who did 4 houses and invoiced for them, the plumber who fitted out a stage and is waiting on 30 days. They rank as unsecured creditors, which in plain language means they join a queue. And by the time that queue is worked through, there is generally nothing left in it. And a subby is not a corporation with a legal department. A subby is a bloke with an ABN, a ute, 2 apprentices, and a personal guarantee on the equipment loan. When $40,000 of invoiced work evaporates, that is not a write-off on a balance sheet. That is the apprentices gone and the ute at risk. This is the part where the subcontractor model, the one that was sold to the trade as freedom and being your own boss, shows what it actually transferred. It did not just move the tax and the super and the sick leave off the builder's books. It moved the risk of the whole chain down to the people least able to absorb it. The bloke at the bottom is the one holding the loss. He was told he was an independent business. On the day it collapses, he finds out what that means. Now the honest side of this, because there is one, and it deserves saying properly. The most recent year showed 3,435 construction insolvencies, which is a fall of about 4.5% on the year before. That is the first annual drop in 5 years. The slope has finally turned. Anyone telling you the industry is still accelerating into the floor is behind the data. And the harder argument, a fixed price contract is a commercial risk that the builder accepted. That is what a contract is. Builders priced work for 2 years ahead and got the cost forecast wrong. And in any other industry that is called a bad bet, not a betrayal. Nobody forced them to sign at those prices. Some of them signed at those prices precisely to win work off the builder down the road, who was quoting more honestly. Both of those are fair. Take them seriously. Here is what they do not explain. They do not explain why the loss lands where it does. A builder taking a risk and losing is a market working. A bricklayer, who was never a party to that contract, never saw the pricing and had no say in any of it, losing $40,000 of completed work is not a market working. That is a chain designed so the risk rolls downhill until it reaches somebody who cannot pass it on. And the drop in the numbers does not undo 4 consecutive years of it. 3,400 companies in a year is still roughly 9 a day. Calling that an improvement is true and beside the point at the same time. So what do you take away from this, sitting at home with a build going up down the road? 2 things worth knowing. The first is that the size of a builder tells you nothing about the safety of your money. Porter Davis was large. Large was the problem because large meant more contracts locked at old prices. The second is that when you hear a builder went under and somebody says he must have been dodgy, the odds are the opposite. The dodgy ones price high and cut quality and survive. The ones who priced tight to win the job and then honoured it while the costs ran away from them are the ones in the liquidator's file. That is not how it should work. It is how it has worked, 4 years running. There is a thread running underneath all of this that goes back a lot further than 2020, and it is the reason the risk had somewhere to roll downhill to in the first place. It was a change to how tradesmen are employed in this country, sold at the time as independents, and the people who designed it knew exactly what it moved and who it moved it onto. That is the next one, and once you see how that arrangement was built, you will understand why every downturn since has landed on the same shoulders. For now, the question, and it is for the ones who have been in it. If you have ever been left holding an invoice when a builder went under, how much was it? And did you ever see a cent of it? Put it in the comments. There are people watching who were told they were the only ones.